You want to sit with the whole gang or what? Yes.
Lots of time. I'm just interested in where people sit. It's like school. Often threatened in church to install escalator too, so just keep racking you up until you get here. Wherever you want to be, just remember that you're getting up to speak, so make it an easy place. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Well, while I share this one thing is you. Huh? Oh, yeah,
All right, here we all are. Welcome. My name is Keith Simmons. I am one of many people in ministry at Central Okanagan United Church, and on behalf of our congregation, And Joyce and Ken's family. I want to welcome you for being here and helping us mark their passage and celebrate their lives. It is a time to settle in together. It's a time that we do together as community and as family to bring ourselves together and to have a place to stand on and to stand from, to work from. In times of future, we might look back on this time and think about this time as we're sitting around a table someplace or sharing a story or laughing around a campfire or dancing to Clapton or whatever it is we're doing. We might remember this. There was a time when Jesus was leaving his friends, when he was going away from them for the last time. And he said to them, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust in me still. There are many rooms in my Father's house, and now I go to prepare a place for you. And after I have gone and prepared you a place, I shall return to take you with me, so that where I am, you may be too." Words of comfort that there's always a place for us. There always has been, and there always will be. A place of warmth and welcome and delight. We gather now to grieve loss and to comfort one another in sorrow. And we gather to mourn the passage and to celebrate the lives of Joyce and of Ken, a loving daughter, a mother, a son, a father, a brother, willing and able people, caring and joyous, true friends, faithful servants, welcoming presence, a garden tender, a flower raiser, food grower, a library organizer, research assistant, a welcomer, a family photographer, a knitter, a crocheter, an infamous pickler, I'm told, a canner of all things, a family celebrator, and with her a music maker, a Clapton singer, a band member, a frank speaker, a loyal companion, a friend to dogs everywhere, a center of love, a faithful believer, loving and beloved, both of them all their lifelong days. We gather as well to surround one another with support and strength and encouragement. May God grant us all the strength that even as we grieve, we may give praise and thanks for God, for the gift of life, and the assurance that God's love abounds in death as it does in life. I'm told we should mark this by singing, and so we're going to sing a few songs. And one thing the song we're going to start with is All Things Bright and Beautiful. The words will be up here. And in our tradition, we stand to sing because it helps the diaphragm immensely. So my music teacher tells me. So you stand, you'll see the words, and Sylvia will play the music for us. All creatures praise and song. Always rise and fall. In what God made of God. Each to God. Each to God. See.
They're gonna do.
So my apologies. When Sylvia and I talked, we weren't going to sing the chorus between the verses, but according to this, we are. So here we go. Let us pray. Loving one, creator of all life, help us to accept that death is part of life, trusting in your goodness and your great love for each and every one of us. We feel now pain on parting with two who were dear to the hearts that held them and hold them still. And we rejoice that we were privileged to experience life with them. And so we entrust Joyce and Kim to you in death, as in life you entrusted them to us. All this we pray in sincerity and in hope. Amen. Now is a time in our tradition, in many churches' tradition, when we offer a prayer of confession. And that's not because we're supposed to feel like we're the lowest thing on earth and only God can lift us up from that. It's because we are raised, my teachers told me, it's particular to our culture, we're raised in a guilt-based culture. But the Baltic culture, the culture of North America and Europe is a guilt-based culture. There are other cultures are honor shame cultures. But they told me if I wanted to think about how we live in a guilt-based culture, I should remember how my mom used to get me to do things, and I know that we grew up in guilt-based cultures. So having realized that, I said that often when we come in together into a time like this, we carry our guilt with us because that's what we do. We have a lot of should-haves and could-haves and would-haves. We do that. That's normal to us in our culture. But we don't need to do that here. We don't at all need to do that here. We can come in here just ready to remember and celebrate two who were near and dear to us. We can leave the guilt way behind. We just give it to God. And that's what a prayer of confession is about. What we need to give to God that we don't need to carry anymore. So let us pray. God of the living and the dead, sometimes we're burdened by the things we have done and by things we have not done. We remember promises broken, opportunities we missed, love we feel we didn't show or return. Forgive us, comfort and heal us, and lift our guilt from us, that we may walk in freedom and in grace. Amen.
Amen.
Friends, you know, the promise, the truth of the resurrection is that God loves us. Christ walks with us in the way. The breath of the Spirit gives us new life. And we can always be resurrected again in another way. So I'm going to read to you from a letter that was written a very long time ago, probably a couple thousand years ago, from a man named Paul, some people in a place called Corinth, who were people who were coming together to learn how to live in a new way. They had heard from Paul and through him from Jesus that it was possible to just love one another. That's all you had to do. They just loved one another so much that everything else dropped away and you could live together in community and treat one another so well that you didn't have to worry about anything else. Everything would just unfold wonderfully and beautifully, and life would be filled with daisies and rainbows. Reminded me of the communes in the 60s. And so people in Corinth did that. And I think maybe a week or two or maybe three in, they started to write Paul letters because it wasn't working out the way they thought it should. And they would write him a letter and they would say that There's a family over there that brings the best food to the potluck, but instead of sharing it with everybody else, they just keep it to their table, hold it to themselves. There's a woman who gets up in church every Sunday and has nothing good to say about anybody at all, particularly her husband. There's another guy who gets up because he's a good orator, a great speaker. He thinks he can tell the rest of us what to do all the time. And it's just driving us nuts. What do you think we should do about that? So Paul writes them back. He writes a series of letters that we have as two. And in one, he said, you know, we've been learning a lot about abundance together. And if you think you have to hold the best to yourself, then you haven't got the message. Like, there's enough for everybody. Think about what's going on inside of you when you have to hold it. And we've been learning to be calm and be gentle with one another, and standing up and giving each other a hard time in the middle of the congregation probably isn't the best way to do that. How could we do things differently? And we all come with gifts. Everybody has something. And just because somebody's a gifted speaker doesn't mean that the person who looks after the place and takes care of the janitorial services isn't as important, or maybe even more important. Like, we could probably do without your words, but we can't do with overflowing garbage. So Paul wrote that. And then partway through his first letter, he said, you know, I think we forgot what this is all about. And so he wrote these words that are used often at times like this. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so that I might move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions and I hand over my body so that I can boast about it, but I do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will come to an end. And as for tongues, they will cease. As for our knowledge, well, it will come to an end. For now, we really only know in part, and we can only see ahead in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. And the greatest of these is love. And so now we're going to hear about love, I think, in words of remembrance and some memories and some thoughts that are going to be shared by, I think Dick and Mark are coming up. Is that right? So please come and share. I don't know if you've decided.
Well, thank you for coming here today to celebrate the life of my mother, Joyce Dorwart. She was born in southern Saskatchewan in 1925. And after graduating from high school, she attended a normal school and became a teacher. And she started teaching in a rural school. So it was actually a one-room school just outside her hometown. And my father had the responsibility of taking his younger sisters to that school, and that's how they met. So after a period of courtship, they were married in 1946. Following their marriage, they moved to a little town in southern British Columbia called Oliver, where they were looking for work, and they got some work in some packing houses, and I was born there. And that started a 25-year journey throughout, particularly the interior of British Columbia. They spent about 3 or 4 years in Oliver. Then they moved up to Prince George, where Dad started an apprenticeship in heating and air conditioning. And that's where my brother Ken was born. And following a few years in Prince George, they moved south to Cranbrook, where they stayed nearly 10 years. And following their stay in Cranbrook, they moved over to Revelstoke, where my brother Ken was married. And after a few years, they then went all the way north up to north coast to Kitimat. And it was in Kitimat that my mother started her librarian career. My mother was a voracious reader. She loved books of all kinds. And she was just tickled to get a job at the city of Kitimat, helping out in the local library there. But you know, of all the times that they traveled throughout the province, they longed to go back to the Okanagan. And so in 1975, they relocated from Kitimat to here in Kelowna. And they lived here for the balance of their lives. They bought only one house, it's just located up the road here in Rutland. My mother was, she loved her history with the family. She decorated the house with artifacts that she collected over the years, both plateware, pictures, crystal, silverware. She was very particular in how she organized the house. If you've ever been in it, there was a giant red carpet that went through the living room, dining rooms, and down the hall. She had two bedrooms. One that had a gold carpet and was called the gold room, and one that was green. It's called the green room. So if you stopped and you stayed there, she would assign you, just like going into a hotel. You can go to the green room, or be assigned to the gold room. And she was very meticulous about that house, very particular in how she looked after it, and particular how you looked after it when you were there. And she loved her yard, particularly flowers. She was a flower child. She loved the color pink. And if you noticed her flowers, she always tried to select flowers that had shade of pink in them. And there was flowers all down both sides of the backyard, both fences. And at the back deck, she had planted grapes. And around that was surrounded with roses. Roses were one of her favorite flowers. And you could sit in the back deck in the spring with those flowers blooming and the grapes starting to bud out. And it was just a little piece of heaven. Now in the front yard, she had raised flower beds. And in particular, right in front of the front house, she had pansies, and they were colored yellow and purple. And she was very particular about those flowers. She would not take any other flower but a pansy, and they had to be yellow and they had to be purple. And Doris and I can tell you a number of stories. We traveled around this city in all the nurseries trying to find those particular flowers. And she had told us once that if we can't, she's just going to leave the flower bed empty. Well, I don't think we ever missed a year where we were able to get them for her. Now, in addition to her home, she loved her motorhome. Now, they bought I think it was about a 35 footer. In fact, Mick would probably know more about it than I did. But she loved that motorhome just as much as she loved the house. And it was absolutely meticulous inside. And she was very particular how you went in there, how you conducted yourself in the motorhome, the same as you did in her house. Now, they traveled quite a bit. They tried to go up, usually in the Sick Moose area, or down in Omak, Washington. And she had, my dad purchased a large section of indoor-outdoor carpet, and she put that down in front when they were out in the campgrounds, and that's where you had your chairs and your tables. And she had a foot mat in the bottom, and you did not track dirt into that motorhome. And if your shoes were dirty, it was raining or muddy that day, you took your shoes off when you went inside. But she did love that motorhome. She was a voracious cooker. There are so many things that I could talk about of the things that she cooked. But Doris and I had one of her favorite dishes was cabbage rolls. Particularly Christmas or Thanksgiving. It was just I just miss that so much. And the boys, they talk over and over about the Nanaimo bars that she made. And my favorite, of course, was bread. I remember when I was younger, if she was breaking bread that day, I'd make a beeline home. Try and get them just as they come out of the oven. Get a slice of that with butter. It was just a little piece of heaven. And Mark talked about her flatbread pie. And my dad actually liked pies of any type. And some of the discussions that I overheard in the kitchen, particularly at Christmas or Thanksgiving, them trying to decide on which particular pie, or with my father, would be numbers of pies that would be baked. I still remember that today. My mother loved to knit and crochet. If you visited her, if she wasn't reading a book, she was sitting in the chair and she was either knitting or crocheting something. And Doris says that all the skills that she's had in that area came from my mother. And I think there's a legacy there. Doris belongs to a newborns group in Arizona, and she sews booties and blankets and little tops for newborns that were born into underprivileged families. And it's that skill set from my mother that lives on with my wife. As I said earlier, she loved reading. She was a voracious reader. She was very fortunate that when they moved to Kelowna, she was able to continue with her librarian career here. She worked at the Rutland Library and eventually actually became the librarian. And she just loved working with her clients. There's some pictures in our albums of, if you have an opportunity to look at them at the lunch, showing how she works with her clients, helping them select books. And she just loved to do that. And she became she was actually the librarian in the Rutland Library up until when she retired, age 65. But even after retirement, she would go to the library every week. And she would take out a number of books. And one of the things she did is when she read a book, she'd take the inside back cover and she would initial it, JD. And we asked her why she was doing that. And she said, well, you know, over the years, I can't remember whether I read this book or that book. So I would peek in the back of the cover. And if my initial was there, I knew that I'd take it out and she wouldn't take it out again. So you can go into that library today and I bet you can go through those books and you will open the back covers and you'll see her initial, JD. One of their favorite things, and if you ever visited her, you'll know what I'm talking about, is her dolls. Over the years, my dad had purchased, I don't know how many dolls she had, but she would display them on the hearth in the living room. And she would change them out. These dolls, some of them represented particular days of the year. There may be a special occasion. So if you visited her 1 month and you saw the dolls and you went the next month, you might find a whole new set. And they were very, very precious to her. And it was a particular trait that I will always carry with me. She loved to camp. And if any of you have ever eaten any of her food there, her garden was extensive and she would grow cucumbers and she'd set up the dills. She had a large strawberry patch for strawberry jam. She had an extensive tomato garden and she would set up tomatoes. Tomatoes were dear to me because I make my own spaghetti sauce and I used her tomatoes and I dearly miss them. My sauce just doesn't taste the same without them. And one of the other things that we did is juicing. Now they could take about 60 to 80 pounds of grapes off their grapevines. And we would spend an intensive 2 or 3 days, 15, 16 hours a day. Picking those grapes, washing, cleaning them, processing them, and then bottling them. And they would get about enough grapes off there to last the entire year. And they drank nothing else but grape juice for breakfast. But we liked the, Doris said I would like the juice so much, we decided we were gonna start doing it for ourselves. So we would go out to the local vineyards, we'd purchase additional 60 to 80 pounds. And we put enough grape juice down for our family for a year. And I got one bottle left sitting in my room and I don't have the heart to open it. It's just a special part. It was a time of bonding for us. When you spend 18 and 16 hours together with your mother and your father, you talk about a lot of things. And you talk about a lot of things you didn't think you would talk about. And I really miss that bonding. But the most important day of the year for my mother was Halloween. That was the day she was born. She loved her pumpkins. And my father developed a real skill in carving pumpkins for her birthday. And they were specifically designed, they were different every year. She would work very closely with my father to come up with a design. And again, when you're coming to the luncheon, I think within what we have some pictures of some of those fabulous pumpkins that would be so. But important for her though was the children. Interesting, it was an important day for her, but it was an important day for the children who would come to her house. She would stay down by the front door all night. And she would talk individually to the children when she handed up the treats. And one year when she wasn't feeling too good, Doris was assisting her. And one of them actually sang happy birthday to her. And it actually just stunned her. So I think at least some of the people in that neighborhood started to realize that that wasn't just a house on Halloween for trick or treating. It was a special birthday house. My mother had her own set of rules regarding what was proper and what was not. And all the time I ever knew her, never heard her curse a word. She had very high standards for herself. She was always trying to learn new and different ways to help other people and to care and love for her family. She was a strong-willed woman. She was the rock of our family in the hard times, but she was the wind in our sails in the good times. I love my mother very much, and I miss her dearly. Should have gone first. And that's wrong, that's so. I want to start by saying, first of all, I'm Mark Dorwart, Ken's oldest son. My dad would not be surprised at what I'm about to share with you. 2 days ago, before coming up here, I'm printing out my notes, much like my uncle, putting on paper. I deleted them. My entire eulogy from the hard drive, gone. So there I am frantically rewriting this. Now, fortunately, much of it's in my head, but not all of it. And I can picture my dad. And I had flashbacks to the 60th anniversary of my grandparents, where it was a hot day, it's 38 degrees. Everybody's looking as fine as they're right now. I figured, well, I'll put a collar shirt on, look good, go up in shorts. There I am, the oldest grandson in shorts. So Graham, Dad, for you. So I will get back, I want to thank Uncle Nick, by the way, for sharing stories about Graham. And for helping me with the younger years for Dad. I kind of feel like the opening act following the headliner. You know, and Elvis has left the building, type of thing. I have no problem talking. I talk a lot. The family will tell you that. This is very hard, and I make no excuses. I'm happy to do this. I'm honored to do this. But please bear with me. There will be some moments where I'm not holding together as much as I'd like. He's not just my dad. He is my brother. Best friend. Mentor and hero. And I mean that. Every word of it. As Uncle Dick said, Dad was born in Prince George, November 27th, 1951. He was the second and final child of my incredible grandparents. By the time he had started school, the family had moved to Cranbrook in 1956. It was there the very first of his town submerged when he started playing baseball around 8 or 9 years old. That developed into a overpowering, borderline unhittable left-handed pitcher. And that's not an exaggeration. I've seen the news, the paper clippings, the kids. He was phenomenal. And he had success not just here, but south of the border. So even against the Americans, he were in hell his own. I remember actually playing catch, being his catcher a couple times. That was terrifying. I could throw a ball. It was terrifying. Brad is heavily involved in it to this day. My father passed that up a bit onto him. He loved to fish. My grandparents would share how he relentlessly filled their freezer. He didn't eat them, but he filled the freezer. And he often enjoyed this with his brother. His Uncle Dick has shared that even though he was the older brother, he often got outdone by my dad. Even though Uncle Dick got to choose the best spot, right? The best spot. He often got outdone by his little brother. Just another example of what he did well. It's also Cranbrook where I believe his another skill, his mischievous side appeared. He borrowed the odd car. So that phrase it. Now he didn't always have the keys. He didn't always have permission. He didn't have a license. But it was just kind of a self-Uber type of deal, right? You know, so he even did that once. Uncle Dick was sharing to his brother's car. Just decided he was going to take his brother's car, and so as he said, a lot of this will be repetitive. I mean, we went to Revelstoke, or he went to Revelstoke, 67, and this is where he started playing guitar, and Dad developed into an outstanding player. He never had lessons, but he practiced that skill to his final days. With company by himself. Molly, his dog, just all the time. He amassed an impressive and intimate collection. It's one that Lisa, Brad, and I believe you other ones will. But we know care for and display. I tried it. Revelstoke is also in 1969, at the ripe old age of 18. Her dad decided to start a family. Now that's a bold move by a brave man, especially when you consider the imposing figure my maternal grandpa Fred presented. Despite this, the two became exceptionally close.
And he was adored by that entire Christopherson family. They absolutely loved Kenny, as they put it, and viewed him as one of their own. It was off to Kitimat in 1970. But also the same year he got married. So before going to Kitimat, they got married, and then off we went. Now I'm sure this was done at record-breaking speed. Because I recall future trips being like Mach 1. And yours truly having to relieve himself in the back seat, pop because we're making great time. We couldn't pull over because then I'd have to pass all the cars they just passed. So there I am in the back of the 70 Challenger. So actually it's not a bad idea. Richmond was the final stop, the founding final stop. That was in 1975. Brad was born there in 76. And Lisa followed in 1980. Soon after, unfortunately, parents divorced. Dad remarried in 1985. As far as I know, I believe that's the last time my father left the country, was to go to Hawaii for his honeymoon in 1985. He was not a traveler, my father. He was just a hardworking homebody. He came to Kelowna in 2001. It was largely to be here with his parents. It just happened to coincide with when they retired. Now he deflected this and said it was for work. Okay, no. He was an intensely devout son and father. And starting in 2000, grandfather. Cole's first, followed by Paige, Bella, Maddie, Andrew, of course, little Jay. He was a loving and attentive grandfather. Always on the streets. A great big bowl, candy. Not just for Halloween. Just whenever the grandkids came by. And not even just when the grandkids, but a big bowl. He's always available for a couch cuddle. And he was an elite dog owner. Molly, his last dog, wanted for nothing. I mean, I would get booted off the couch because I was in Molly's spot. She ate what he ate. She was the fourth child. Dad worked a lot. Now, not necessarily always in the same day. He was a master of getting work done. But he worked for over 55 years. He started at sheet metal. Most of his life was spent as a gas fitter. He was known as one of, if not the very best, and a couple of the gentlemen here could attest to that. And he was never complacent. He continued educating himself, earning several degrees throughout his life. He had the answers, or he would get them. If he couldn't, it wasn't solvable. It wasn't going to happen. And they were, as I said, they were usually implemented efficiently, promptly, so you could get to the golf course, right? Or maybe a pub, for a safety meeting. He was with KD Engineering for over 35 years. Now, that's partly because Dad didn't like change. And it was also because of his skill and expertise and loyalty. Neither he or his employer could let that happen. He wasn't going anywhere. He was revered by his customers. He was viewed almost like a son by the company's owner, Al Douglas. And after reluctantly accepting retirement, He started his own business, KMD Boiler Works. Keeping in mind, he's in his mid-60s, starting a business that requires heavy physical labor. That speaks to the work ethic of my father. My sister took care of the books because he didn't want to have to deal with change and doing anything different. He just wanted to focus on the customers and on his work. He was an excellent pool player. I mean, his hospitality and charm, humor, made you feel good as you were losing. You know, he'd make you laugh. He'd put a smile on your face. And actually, he put a smile on your face, period. Just with the boisterous personality he had, he was an absolute joy to be around. Finally, golf that I referenced. I think perhaps his greatest passion and skill. It's tough because everything he did it with passion and skill. He was virtually unbeatable. And I mean, to the point where as a member of Newlands in Langley, he won the club championship. He was an elite player. He once beat an assistant pro at Shaughnessy. I don't know how many of you know this. He was doing a service call at Shaughnessy Golf and Country Club, an elite golf course in Vancouver. The assistant pro, they were talking about golf. He invites Dad out. They played 9 holes. Dad beat him. He beat him by a shot. This is the assistant pro. He's looking at this guy doing this boiler work. He shot 37 or something. All of a sudden, the guy didn't have time to finish the round. He had things to do. He couldn't. I don't think, in his mind, I think he didn't lose if they didn't finish the round. So, but more importantly, everybody wanted to play with him. Everybody wanted to be his partner. I mean, if you were his partner, you were pretty much guaranteed you were going to win. We'd almost have to fight to get to who's Ken's partner or my dad's partner. He was an avid Green Bay Packers fan. To the point, he couldn't even watch the games live. He'd wait. He didn't record them. He'd just wait. If it was on replay, he'd watch if they won. If it wasn't, they didn't win, he wouldn't watch it. He could not take watching them live. He passed this love on to Brad and I. Now, it's not an easy team to cheer for in the 80s if you didn't follow football. They were not very good. Dad, we got to be a Packers fan. So, but Brad and I were fortunate enough in 1997 to watch with our father as they won the Super Bowl. That day almost got me evicted. It was at my house. I lived in a duplex. My landlords lived next door. So of course, at halftime and any chance we got the music's cranked up on top of our loud cells. We got a keg of beer and there was 5 of us. So it was quite the party. I mean, he was a proud or private man, but he was also often the life of the party. I mean, the pictures you'll see, I mean, he was either quietly by himself, he'd play solitaire, pool by himself, as I say, the guitar, or he was the life. It was one or the other. His house was always filled with Clapton, Eagles, Don Henley, more Clapton, and several other rock and blues icons. Some of my fondest memories are in his living room. We're barbecuing steaks and just listening to music. And my other favorite memories, and maybe even the most, are at Grandma and Grandpa's basement. Watching him, my grandfather, my uncle, my brother, my cousins, and anyone else. I'm the only one who didn't play. I don't know what happened there, but essentially, I'm the only one who didn't play. So that was the rugby. I mean, the recording sessions were legendary. They were just so special, and they were done well. And you guys did a heck of a job of that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention his dancing prowess. He was a machine on the dance floor. I mean, he often required multiple partners to get through an evening. He'd just rotate through, and I would see these ladies. Many are here, they could attest to this. No, okay, just. They'd wear him out. He's a heck of a dancer. He was our family rock. Always available, compassionate, supportive. He was punctual. An hour early was normal. 5 minutes, he'd be there an hour early. He meant what he said, and he did what he promised. He's the one we all went to for answers to life's questions or problems. He'd share his thoughts directly, without bias. It wasn't always what you wanted to hear, but it was genuine. Without his personal opinion. It was never an agenda, just a sincere desire to help. And he led that full life, exactly how he wanted. We should all be so lucky. He would be happy we're here celebrating, both he and his mother. He would not want a big fuss made over him. He would not want a sad or melancholy tone to this. So I'll end with a story or two, and to showcase his youthful spirit and a little bit of our special bond. I played a lot of golf with Dad. And when we were in Richmond, that was usually at a club called Fraserview, public golf course. One round I was in my mid-20s or so. We were playing with an older married couple. And we got to a hole around 15 or so. And the lady says to us, not a word of lie, she just looks at me and goes, okay, you guys are family, I get that. And I believe you guys are brothers. He goes, so, but my only question is, who's the older one? The old man's reaction was hysterical. Yeah, I never lived that one down, ever. And happily so. I mean, it's summarized, we were in our usual having a few pops adolescent behavior. It was easy to believe we were brothers, the way we behaved. Finally, around that same time, and I wasn't going to share this one because it may be construed the wrong way, but I'll say it and describe as accurately as I can. About that same time, he came by to play some pool. I had a table in my basement. Snooker was our game of choice. Now we decided, again, with a few beers, it was going to be 4 out of 7. He was an outstanding player. But somehow I scaled Everest that day. And that was one of the times on one hand I can count that I was able to take him down. Well, that didn't go over well. You must have cheated, this and that. So our discussion, I'm not really sure how, but it turned into a full-on wrestling event. So you have to understand, I'm sitting there wrestling with my father. I couldn't make this up if I tried. So it started down by a pool table. It was a 3-level house. We eventually got up towards the dining room table and then into the living room. At the time, I'm living with Corey. This was an uncle on my mother's side. Now, Corey's only 3 years older than I am, but that's what I was living with. He came home. He saw us on the living room floor rolling around. We kind of look at him, he looks at it, he shakes his head, goes upstairs, goes to bed. We eventually get to our feet, and as we're doing so, we lost our balance. I think he kind of was lunging at me, I think. Well, he goes through the front window. Well, at least his arm did. His whole body didn't. So he was cut pretty bad. So off to emergency we go, which is fortunately only a couple minutes up the road. So we're there, and a kid still discussing this pool game as he's getting stitched up. He's got, I mean, he had nerve damage to his arm and after the fact. Right? So he blamed me for his goal. I haven't been able to go the same since because of you. So we're getting stitched up, or he's getting stitched up, we're discussing this. All of a sudden Heather walks in. Heather, what are you doing here? I goes, I'm visiting my mom in the hospital. Across the hospital, I hear you idiots arguing. So she comes rolling in and there we are, right? She's just, again, same thing. Shakes her head and just, after checking this out, she goes. I know many of you have stories. And at lunch, I'd love to hear them. I really do. That man embedded it. Maybe. 6 months feels, it could be 6 days for me. I get through, but I miss him dearly. As does my brother and my sister. I know that. And I'm sure many of you. I sincerely want to thank you all for coming out to honor and remember and respect my father and my grandmother. It means absolutely everything to me and to my siblings. Thank you.
Thank you both. Very much. Now it's time for us to do something together. Long time ago, maybe 3,000 years ago, somebody else was lost in sorrow and grief and suffering. He went back to the images of his childhood, and he was a shepherd looking after sheep. And so he wrote a prayer that's a poem, and he wrote it in his own language, in Hebrew. And Shakespearean English is as close as we can get to that language. So together, let's read the 23rd Psalm, Psalm 23. I don't know if it's up there, but it's certainly on your bulletin on the front. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. And now we'll sit and reflect as we see some images from those lives and the stories that we've just heard. Thank you for putting that together. We're going to sing again, Nearer My God to Thee, and the words will be up here, and again, standing is always good. Let's pray. Giver of life, you know, and you care for all people, whoever we are and whatever we might think of you. Speak your word to us and come among us with love to give life to all, today and forever. Amen. A reading from the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 3, verses 13 to 18, called the true wealth. Happy are those who find wisdom and those who get understanding, for her income is better than silver and her revenue is better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all of her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called happy. I didn't know Joyce or Kim. All I do know of them, I've learned from the family that loved them. I just learned a lot more. It seems to me they were people, mother and son, who knew what the author of this proverb knew, that the true wealth of the world, what it is, it's wisdom. The wisdom of sages one might seek out, as in an epic story, perhaps after many hard journeys through many strange lands. Somebody nested on a mountain somewhere in Nepal or Tibet who would help you understand that true wealth, true worth in the world doesn't lie finding the path to riches or digging up a pirate's hoard, but rather in the shared relationships between those we love and those that love us. Wealth is in the music we make together. It's in the songs that we sing, the laughter of friends and family gathered around the table or the fire or their instruments, making music and taking joy in one another. True value for someone who grew up in the prairies in the depression that hammered our world in the 1930s, as Joyce did, lies in relationship with family and with friends, with shared community resources like libraries and gathering places of assurance of God's grace, like churches and libraries and land. Joyce knew the true wealth of the land, bringing forth with it flowers and food, preserving its bounty for the days to come. Days when pickles and peaches and cherries would bring the flavor and zest to fall and winter tables, laden with baking and good, wholesome food. These tables might have sported cloths made specially for the occasion, those gathered around them wearing perhaps something knitted or crocheted or sewn for their use, or for one of their elder relations that was passed down and accepted as a gift for future growth. True value might be found in the bits of this and the pieces of that coming together in whole new ways, or populating storage areas as things worn out for one purpose might find a new life in another. There's a book in my library that teaches children about that sort of value. It's called Something from Nothing, and it follows a coat made by a grandfather through every stage of its existence, worn from coat to vest to tie to new creation in a warm and memory-laden quilt. All our treasures, nothing goes to waste. In a generation that knew whole seasons without the benefit of shoes, there are impacts and lessons that still have something to teach us. Fred Craddock, who's an American preacher, I was sharing this story with the family earlier, tells a story about a senior's home in Toronto a few years ago. Staying there as a guest during a series of workshops he was helping to lead, Fred noticed something that he said he could not help but advise the management of. People would dress for dinner at that place. He said they would come in tucks and tails and evening dresses with jewels and cuffs and links and the whole 9 yards. They would sit well-clothed at tables, a utensil for every course, elegant, finely dressed, and finely spoken. They greeted him kindly. They treated him well. That's why their behavior surprised me so much, he said. They were the last people on earth I expected to do what they were doing, and finally I decided to let the manager know what was going on, so I called him over. Yes, sir, he said. How can I help you? Well, I explained to him that these nice people, so well-dressed and so finely mannered, were robbing him blind. They were taking the sugar packets and the creamers from the tables before retiring to their rooms. They were filling purses and pockets with their booty without so much as batting an eye. The manager smiled at Fred and he said, oh, they're not thieves. No, they just grew up in the Depression. They couldn't leave those behind any more than somebody could leave a jewel or a ring on the table. But don't worry, we clean the rooms too, he said. So every morning their savings come back to the table where they can be salvaged by another saving hand the next day. Saving everything and knitting it into something new wasn't all that marked that generation. Entertainment was something you enjoyed with your neighbors, often because it was created by and with your neighbors. In some cases, you were the entertainment and the neighbors were looking for you. In the Dorwart household, playing in the family band came naturally to most of the family, except for the roadie perhaps, but the sound of music rang out from the basement in organ and guitar, sounds that carried them through many moves across the province, finally landing here in Rutland. And it was here to Rutland that Ken returned years after leaving home to build his own story, his own family. Coming back to look out for his parents, he continued to serve those who relied on his good work and strong commitment to keep their systems going. Even after his retirement, I'm told he hung on to a few valued relationships. A Clapton fan, I'm told you could hear his guitar modeling the riffs and the key changes that Eric was famous for, the songs he lifted up coming forth from Ken's guitar. Unafraid also to share the depth of his analysis with family and friends. I'm told you always knew in clear and certain terms where you stood with Ken. If he caught you in a close brush with the truth, he'd let you know, no matter how good your intentions were, that they weren't good enough to cover up a liaison with a lie. Some people might have been upset by that, although probably not those who'd experienced his excitement at their arrival, his insistence that they join in devouring at least one steak, perfectly plated from his barbecue. You better be hungry, I'm told, if Ken was hosting you, hungry and thirsty for a great party too. He might have been an introvert in some parts of his life, but he came alive at gatherings where he could be the life of the party and the center of the event. You might see that in some of those photos that we looked at and some others that are waiting for you at the lunch. Photos Joyce probably took and cataloged to record the family gathered to celebrate their love for one another. Ken, I'm told, had a particular love for his dogs. It's been said that to come back as one of Ken's dogs would be something for anybody to aspire to, especially if you had the experience of inadvertently sitting in the dog's place on the couch. Get out of there, he'd say, you're sitting in the dog's place, we heard earlier. Puts me in a mind of a story that my dad used to tell. It's one about a fellow who woke up from an unexpected nap and found himself on a path with the best dog he'd ever walked a trail with. They were in a fine, beautiful countryside, meandering along over green grass and down mountain meadows, beside brooks running clear to pools where the trout lay, shadowed in willow casts. He realized at some point that in the wandering, he must have died in his sleep, because this particular dog had been gone for a very long time, and he himself hadn't had that spring in his step to navigate trails for at least a month of Sundays. Coming through a thicket, they were startled to find the massive walls of a splendid city, decked in marble and gold, and the gate of its entrance staffed by who you'd expect to be staffed by a fellow wearing a snow-white gown of a prophet, crowned in white hair and a flowing beard. He congratulated the traveler on arriving at his destination and asked him his name so he might check it in the book before him. Providing his name, the traveler asked what city this was. Well, why, this is heaven, my friend, said the guardian, and I see you're here on the list. Good to know, came the reply. So is there water somewhere for my companion? It's been a while since the creek. Oh, said the gatekeeper. I'm afraid your dog isn't allowed to enter. Well, this place is for humans alone. The traveler paused and he thought, he shook his head and said, well, thanks then. I guess we'll be on our way. And not pausing to look back or caring what the gates of heaven did with that, they continued on. A little further down the road, winding down the trail to its valley bottom, they came across a well-worn home, stooped and settled into the land with a broad front porch made to hold the one rocking there. The traveler, noting an ancient pump in the middle of the yard, asked, do you mind if I draw a bit of water for my friend? Oh no, said the one on the rocker, not at all. You'll find a bucket close by and a ladle. You might want to help yourself. Priming the pump and gushing its cool, clear water, the traveler asked as his companion laughed deeply, what place is this? Oh, why, this is heaven. Really? Said the traveler, but how can that be? I just left heaven. It's a big palatial city. It's all white marble and gold and prophets and such. It's just up there around the bend. That place? Laughed the rocker. Well, that's not heaven. That's not even close. Might even be the opposite if you ask me. Well then, how can you let them use your name? Like, how can you let them get away with that? Oh, it's not much can be done about it, said the figure on the porch. It's a free country. But you know, we do find it helps weed out the ones who leave their best friends behind. Smiling, they rose to hug the travelers home. I believe it would be the height of human arrogance to think we're the only piece of existence that does not go on. We go on becoming in some way or another to continue finding the true wealth and joy in relationships, in music, in family, in friends, in the garden, in food and companionship and blessings with one another and the lively, enlivening spirit that breathed life into us at the first place. Nothing ends. We're only changed and converted and rearranged into something else, something new and something wonderful. Just as a guitar changes strings into music and a garden changes seeds into beauty. So we are brought into new ways of being out of the cocoons we've grown around us in the old. Joyce and Ken are off together, sharing somehow their new ways of being. their new ways of being through the old, responding still to the call to pour out love in ways unique to their own being, their own response, their own ways of showing up and being counted. Let us think of that as we pray. Let us pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for the gift. Well, let's pray anyway. Let's give thanks for the gift of relationship, of music, of joy. Let's give thanks for Joyce and Ken and the lives among us. They each brought their own unique gifts to this place and to this land and to this community and all the places they populated. We give thanks that they have not ended. They live on in the hearts that knew him, in the places that held them, in the places they shaped, in the hearts of love. They live on in you as we do. And we give thanks, loving one, that they responded to your call to love in all the ways they could. And we give thanks because all of us in this room, everyone here, benefited in some measure from what they brought. Amen. So now let's sing again. I have called you by your name. Yeah, Please be seated. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for all the blessings of life and for watching over us in death, for all the ways in which we come to know your love. We thank you for those who share our lives, for families and loved ones, for caregivers and companions, for friends and neighbors. And especially today, we give you thanks for Joyce and Ken. We praise you for the gift of their lives, for their gifts of understanding and kindness, treating others with respect and serving well, for their appreciation of the living world, for the sense of love, care, responsibility, and determination and dedication to relationships with others. Comforting and caring God, we pray for Joyce and Ken's family and friends, for all who grieve their loss, especially remembering this day their children and their children and their children, the friends they shared in life and living with. Especially on this day of marking passages, we recall the memory of friends and family members who went before them and in whose company they now exist in the light of your being and the warmth of your love. We remember too those who cared for them with their own offerings of love, bringing them gently through the last days of their living, who took them into their hearts and warmed them up with the joy of their own being. May they know the comfort of your love. Grant us all a vision of your purpose in our life and work together, that we may bear witness to the hope which is in Jesus Christ, in life, death, and in life beyond death. And hear us now as we say together the words that Jesus taught us, praying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Now is the time of sending forth a time of commendation. It's also printed in your bulletin on the inside page. God created us and gave us new life. And when we die, God takes us up on the wings of the Spirit and gives us new life. And so Joyce and Ken Dorwart, into the love of God and the gift of eternal life, we let your spirits go. And we say together, into the warmth and light of God's love, we let you go. Into the freedom of wind and sunshine, we let you go. Into the dance of the stars and the moon, we let you go. Into the Spirit's breath and the arms of the one who gives life, we let you go. We love you, we will miss you, and we bless you on your way. So go in love, joy, and peace until we meet again. Amen. Into your hands, O merciful God, we commend your servants, Joyce and Ken. Acknowledge, we humbly pray, sheep of your fold, lambs of your flock, children of your own redeeming. Receive them into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of all the saints in light. The psalmists tell us that weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes in the morning. May God bring you along with morning dancing. May God remove the sackcloth of tears and clothe you with joy, so that your soul may offer praise and be not silent. And may the blessing of God remain with you now and forever. Amen. And now we're going to sing one more song, like a hymn stream. May you go out into the world, living lives attuned to creation, to the earth herself, and what can be brought forth from her. May you go out in the world being aware of the people who went before you and the stories that you carry with you. May you go out in the world using all the gifts you have to build a relationship and kindness and a world and a community that is better because you were in it and more well knit together and held together. May you go out into the world with an appreciation for canning and cabbage rolls and flatbread pie. May you go out into the world catching the hard fishes that are tossed by the good fisher. May you celebrate, may you cheer, and maybe even be fans of the Green Bay Packers. Well, may you go out into the world doing all you can to support lost causes and worthy ones. Do the best you can to bring laughter and joy and music to the world, to bring what can be brought, and to celebrate the ordinary, the everyday, the good parts of life on this day and all days. May you do that. May we all. Amen. So this brings to an end this part of remembering, a process that's been going on for a while, and will go on a little longer. You're getting together, where did we say? It's on the back of the bulletin at the Harvest Golf Club on 2725 KLO Road for more stories and more pictures. Thank you for being here now.